We're at Armbrust Pro Gym here in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Meeting my training partner Jimmy here in just a minute. So we'll run inside real quick and we'll wait for him in the office and we'll get going. Come on in. How'd you do? Did it? Tough, man. Struggle.
You and Sean were funny though.
Playing with, we had fun. Right up until the places. Alright, let's not waste any time. We'll jump straight into chest here. First exercise I'm going to do today is the machine fly. I like to pre-exhaust, or what most people consider pre-exhaust, by doing an isolation move before my first compound move. And as far as preference, I just prefer to use this machine fly here. So I'm going to get a couple sets to warm up, kind of work out the kinks, the pops, the clicks, that sort of thing. Take them real slow, make sure that get my chest warm and just ready to go here. Going to get a couple of warm-up sets with the incline bench because that's going to be my next movement after the machine flies. Don't know if we're going to catch those on video or not, but I'm going back and forth. I'm going to do a couple machine flies and I'm going to do a couple incline bench, kind of work my way up so that I'm not only warming up just my chest area, but my shoulders and of course triceps, elbows, that sort of thing. With age, of course, and years training, you know, all this stuff can be pretty stiff when you come in. It takes quite a while these days for me to warm up, so probably 2-3 sets of warm-ups for machine flies, and probably the same for the incline bench as well before I can go to my top set. So I think this right here is one of my first working sets here. As far as reps, I don't like to count reps a whole lot. You know, I like to hit the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 range when it comes to these isolation moves, but I don't count them. I don't put too much emphasis on them. I go more by feel, and that goes for the weight as well. The weight and the amount of weight that I'm pushing is important. I like to push as much weight as I can. Truth is, I'm an averagely strong bodybuilder. I'm not moving any big weights these days. I'm trying to use weights that are going to allow me to get clean reps and not end up in the basement. When I say the basement, I consider the basement to be, you know, under 6 reps. So I'm starting out here with this first set. I'm going to get everything that I can. I'm going to try to go for about 3 sets here. As I progress through my blast, which usually lasts about 5 weeks before I cruise for a week, I increase my volume. So right here, as far as volume, I'm right around the 3 sets per exercise volume, about halfway through my 5-week blast. When I start the blast, usually only at about 2 sets per exercise, and as the weeks go by, I increase that volume up to 3 sets, and for some exercises up actually even to 4, so that at that 5th week of blasting, I'm at my top amount of volume, doing the most amount of sets per exercises, and sometimes I even add an extra exercise for each muscle group as well. Let's go. You're going to notice here that the repetitions that I'm doing are very deliberate. I have a pause at the bottom. Everything is very controlled. The older I get, the more things hurt, and I just have to be careful. I can't get into crazy amounts of weight, moving sloppy repetitions and that sort of thing. So this exercise to me, as far as what's going on in my brain, is just more of a stretch and squeeze for each repetition. I'm kind of posing with the weight, so to speak. You may catch in this angle right here that my hips, my ass, are actually pushed out away from the bench a little bit. They're not tight against the back pad. My shoulders are, but my ass and the hips are actually out front, just to take a little bit of the stress off of the front delt. I actually, sometimes on this type of exercise, if I'm training at a different gym, I may actually opt for a more of an inclined bench that gives me more of a decline squeeze, if that makes any sense. As the pad inclines back, the angle of pull actually drops down the chest, so it's almost like a decline fly or a decline squeeze. So as we move here into the incline presses, I'm getting warm here, pretty warm already, but again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure that shoulders and tries feel real good before I go up to my top weight. I don't like to count warm-ups. I don't like to count repetitions. I don't like to count and say that I'm going to do 2 warm-ups or 4 warm-ups. It depends on what I feel like that particular day. There are days when I'm going to come in and I'm going to hit 2 or 3 warm-ups and I'm going to be ready to go. Everything's going to feel great. There's going to be many other days where I'm going to hit 4 or 5, and even then I'm not real sure, so I might add another one. It just depends on how I feel, and that's the part of adapting to how your body or what your body's doing in response to aches, pains, how far you are into your blast, what your diet's like. I know when I'm dieting and prepping, you know, I'm a little bit lower on calories, things tend to be a little stiffer, things tend to hurt and ache a little bit more, so there may be more warm-ups involved there. When I come off of a cruise that first week back, I feel like $1,000,000, so it doesn't usually take as long to warm up at that time. Right there, I just made the decision that, you know what, even at only 225, it felt heavy enough. I wasn't going to push any higher because I wanted to make sure that the repetitions that I'm getting are tight. You're going to get a good idea right here as Jimmy does this set, the difference in training styles for repetitions and form between myself and Jimmy. We've got 2 different objectives here. I'm a bodybuilder, competitive bodybuilder, so I'm going to train and do my repetitions a little bit differently than an NFL defensive lineman. His repetitions are more for power. His reps are more explosive. He's just looking to move his weight and get his repetitions as clean as he can, but as quick as he can. If you notice too, he may come back around for another set in a minute and you'll notice what I'm talking about. His elbows are tucked a little bit, where mine are flared and mine are high, so that I get a better stretch, and I'm isolating a little bit more of the chest as opposed to where Jimmy's going to work chest, shoulders, and triceps almost equally with his presses.
Good. Come on. I got it. Good. You got another one. You got another one. All right, man. Go ahead. Get it. Get it. I got it. Get it. Get it. Yep. Got you.
Keep an eye on his elbows right here, and you're going to see how they tuck a little bit. He's got a thumb under grip. So there's a lot more tricep, a lot more shoulder, equally with, of course, with the chest as well. Doesn't matter how pretty you look in the NFL, you just got to be able to move some people out of your way. You got to be able to move some weight, and that's his primary objective when we're training.
Yep. All right. As long as I feel good.
That would be my iPod that I just changed songs. I was not playing with my nuts. Just saying. It's a little hard to see in this angle, but if you take note of my grip, I've got kind of an odd grip. It's not a thumb under, it's not a thumb over. On my pressing movements especially, or primarily with chest movements with the barbell, I tend to have my thumbs out along the length of the bar for some reason. I don't like going with a thumbs under grip. It doesn't feel right, and it makes me feel like I'm tucking my elbows in more than I want to. Yet if my thumbs are over, then I'm getting that feeling that it's pushing my elbows too high and it puts my wrists in a vulnerable position. So it's just something that I've come up with over the years that's kind of individual to me. I haven't noticed too many other people doing it. Don't know that I recommend it. Much like a thumb under grip, you got to know what you're doing, because if the bar gets away from you, not only just from bouncing or when you go to rack it and you don't have it on the rack, that sort of thing, but even if the bar is bent, a lot of people don't understand that if you take a bar down to your chest that is bent from squatting, it's a cheap bar, you hit that the wrong way and it's going to want to roll right out of your hand. This last set here, I'm cutting the reps a little bit shorter. I'm keeping the bar about an inch off of my chest. As my chest gets more and more pumped, I lose a little bit of flexibility. And when I try to get that bar all the way into my chest, and some of you may have the same problem yourself, it really starts to put a lot of pressure on my front delts, and it gets to the point where it's relatively uncomfortable, almost painful. I still have more chest work to do, so I don't want to fry the front delts. I also have shoulder training after chest here that I need to get into for the same reason. I'm going to warm up here on some flat dumbbell presses. I'm going to do a couple sets, even though I've been doing incline and I've done machine flies already. Still going to get acclimated to the groove here, to the exercise, move up a couple sets to move up in weight just so that I get a better idea of the amount of weight that I'm going to be able to move, how my shoulders are feeling, that sort of thing. One of the things that I like to do when it comes to my weight selection is whether I'm doing low volume, I've just started the blast and I'm at roughly 2 sets per exercise, or whether I'm at 3 or even all the way up as high as 4 per exercise, closer to the end of the blast. I like to keep my weight consistent, the weights that I'm using for the exercise, through all the sets if at all possible. What that does is it allows me to get higher repetition range, relatively speaking, when I start that first set. And of course, as the sets go by, my repetitions come down, my rep range drops, so that on that last exercise, I'm likely going to be in the basement and I'm going to be battling to get that 6th rep. For me, anything that's under 5 is an absolute worthless, useless set. I don't hit it too often, but every now and then, even if I'm hitting 5, and I'm going to hit a couple sets of 5 here throughout the video on this particular day, That's as low as I go. I don't like to go any lower.
Are you pointing at dumbbells, Yeah.
All right, well, I'm done with chest. We're going to move into shoulders, and we're going to start with some side laterals. They're going to look a little short. I called them pro side laterals. That's how the pros do them. It's kind of a mini repetition or a half rep. Notice that the elbows are still going to be close to parallel. They're not all the way. They're not as high as my shoulders. This is going to allow me to move more weight. And it also, the other thing that I've found that's critical for my shoulders over the years is I don't have any shoulder pain from the side laterals. When I was younger and I was a baseball player, I tore the labrum in my right shoulder. And it's been a nagging injury for, well, pretty much since I've been training. It took me 4 or 5 years when I first started training to really find out how to train around it, instead of having the surgery where I could have ended up cutting that part of the cartilage out. I could have ended up with what's called loose body, where I had a little bit of loose movement through the shoulder area, and I didn't know if I wanted to gamble with that or not. So I found a way to train around it, which is essentially the premise of this video anyway. As far as longevity is concerned, you can't always just race to the operating table or take a drug, have surgery to fix your problem, when you can essentially just find a way to be smart about your training and train around, whether it be a minor injury, a major back injury, knees, that sort of thing. So what I've found with side laterals is when I use a more abbreviated repetition or rep range, range of motion, I'll get it right, bear with me. An abbreviated range of motion, I have no pain in my right shoulder at all. As soon as those weights lighten and I'm able to go up to where my elbows are level with my shoulder or even a little bit higher, there goes the pain. Pretty sharp banner back there. I'm like, what's that? Intense muscle. This exercise here is a little variation that I don't usually do for rear delts, or what I like to refer to as rear side delts. I don't do them seated very often. I usually do them bent over. Today, my back was feeling a little tight. I didn't really want to support myself by bending over, so I thought I would take a variation that I use on occasion when my lower back is tight. And that's to sit down, and as you're seeing right here, I'm having a hard time getting adjusted because my lower back is tight and my legs are in the way, so I've got to find the right angle here. The reason I refer to this exercise as not only rear delts, but rear side delts, because I feel that it hits not only the rear delts, but it hits the back part of the side delt as well. Now, when you're doing regular side laterals, usually, unless you're leaning into them, you're not going to feel it as much through the back side of the side delt. You're going to feel it more from the middle of the side delt to the front of the side delt. So what I like to do, because the shoulder joint is multi-angled, I like to be able to mix up the angles as much as possible. Some days when I'm doing my side laterals, I'll lean in more. Some days I'll lean back more. Some days I'm looser, more loose with my form. Other days I'm real tight and the weight comes down. So I like to mix it up as much as I can, because you can only do so much with the side lateral. So when you start mixing up rep ranges, you start mixing up the angles, at least you're getting a variation on the same exercise. So here you'll see the angle here a little bit better. I'm hitting the rear delts, but I'm also hitting the side delt, or the back part of the side delt as well. And this is a very difficult exercise to really get a huge range of motion, even if you want to. You can drop down to 12s and 15-pound dumbbells, and you're still likely to not move that dumbbell with those elbows up very high in this particular position. I'm going to move on to the overhead dumbbell press here, supported. And I'm going to notice that I'm kicking my shoulders back as far as I can. I set this seat up as high as possible so that I can get my shoulders actually over the top of the backrest. The reason for that is so that I can get a real good arch, throw my shoulders back almost to the point of it being a very high incline chest shoulder movement as opposed to a straight up overhead shoulder press. Again, coming back to my shoulder issues with the torn labrum, if I were to use a long bench or a bench that has a long backrest on it to where my head cannot go back and my shoulders cannot go back over the top of the backrest, I have a lot of pain in my right shoulder, and I actually will have a weakness where the right side will lag. So there's a strength imbalance in there that over the years I have balanced out real well, but if I were to go back to using a high backrest, that right side would lag. Another thing you're going to see here with this exercise is I'm going to eat these reps here pretty quick. The angle doesn't feel good. I'm not strong in this angle on this particular day for whatever reason. So what I'm going to do, instead of fight the exercise and dig in and try to get what I can, I just opt out. Basically said fuck it, and it's not working, the angle doesn't work, doesn't feel good, and that's taking your plan and not making it as black and white as you possibly can, but being open to make these changes based on the fact that the exercise just didn't feel that good. So I'm moving on to overhead Smith presses without a backrest. Shoulders are already pretty shot. So we're going to get into 3 sets here of overhead Smith presses. We're going to finish up with a different exercise that you may not be terribly familiar with, and I'll discuss that, talk about that in just a minute. My shoulder pressing weights come down considerably based on the fact that I follow chest with shoulders. I'm on a traditional split. You can call it old school if you want to. Chest, shoulders, tries on one day, kind of a push-pull type situation, and then legs on their own day. And the reason for that, again, is because of the shoulder issues. By the time I'm done with chest, I might not be able to push the poundages on shoulders that I could if I started with shoulders. But at the same time, my shoulder area, the entire complex, is as warm as it's going to get. So it's a trade-off that I'm willing to make. Since I have done that split and followed chest with shoulders, I haven't had any shoulder problems. And that's, to me, again, it comes back to longevity. Who knows? Maybe I wouldn't be training as long as I have. Maybe I'd have an injury to my shoulder that may be worse than what it was. Right here, we're going into the overhead press. Kind of an exercise that I like to finish with on occasion that covers the entire shoulder complex. It's hitting everything from the rear delts to the side delts to the front delts. And of course, my stamina here is going downhill quickly. There will be no lockout because at this point, for me to lock out even light dumbbells, I would have a hard time controlling them in the top position. A lot of times, I'll finish an exercise or finish a muscle group with an exercise that is fixed. And by fixed, I just mean in a fixed plane, be it a Smith overhead press, because we're talking about shoulders, or maybe for chest, a flex machine press, something that is fixed so that I don't have to balance it out, so that I could still go into the last exercise and push some weight without having to worry left to right, that sort of thing, as far as balancing everything out, and just finish it off on that last exercise, moving as much weight as I can and going to failure.
He's an all-pro defensive tackle, but he was mad because Minnesota was going to draft her, was going to pick him up after he signed his contract.
Moving into triceps here, as most recognize, these are what are referred to as skip extensions. Branding is everything. Got to get the skip name on anything that I can. But leaning back on a preacher bench here to do overhead extensions is a lot easier on the elbows, brings into play the long head of the tricep, which I have said many times on Intense Muscle and talking about tricep development, that I feel that it's important, I don't want to say critical, but it's important to do more long head work when it comes to your direct tricep work than it is anything else. As an example, be it close grip bench, dips, things of that nature. I've done a chest, shoulder, and tri workout, or I'm doing a chest, shoulder, and tri workout in one day. My tris are already hammered from the chest presses. They're hammered from the shoulder presses. So to sit and do a close grip press or a dip, to me, is just redundant. The outer head, even the medial head of the triceps, really been hammered already. So for me to sit there and do, close grip with half of what I would bench doesn't seem logical to me. So what I want to do is I want to move into more long head work to really get a good stretch in the tricep, hit the long head as hard as I can, and then I'll finish up here in a minute with some close grip push-ups. I don't do a lot of tricep and bicep work directly. I rely on chest and shoulders for a lot of my tricep development these days, and I rely on my back exercises for a lot of my bicep work as well. Kind of came across that on accident because I essentially am trying to prioritize my training and my muscle groups. 2 or 3 years ago, I decided that I was going to kick back a little bit on my arm work because my arms are a strong point genetically anyway. And when I say a strong point, of course, strong point is always a relative term. My chest, shoulders, and back need the most work, so I felt that if I could cut my stronger areas, or the work that I do for my stronger areas, it would allow more recovery and potentially a little bit more work in the gym for my weaker areas. So as I cut the tricep and bicep volume down, sometimes even playing with only training tricep and bicep every other week, they started to grow. I found that kind of odd, and I thought, well, it's just an odd coincidence, and it just continued. So I started playing around with arm work or direct arm work with some of my clients who were complaining that their arms just wouldn't grow. And after taking a closer look, it started to become pretty obvious that most people simply overtrain their arms. By the time they're done doing chest and shoulders on one day, coming back later in the week and doing triceps, the arms, as far as tricep and bicep, are getting a lot of direct work very frequently, even more frequently during the week than the major muscle groups like legs, chest, and back. It would be much the same as training back 2 or 3 times a week. You wouldn't do that and expect to grow, but yet for some reason logic tells us that if we want our arms to grow, we've got to put them on a separate day and hammer them so that they're getting hit 2 or 3 times a week, and that just doesn't add up. It didn't add up for me anyway. So when I found that I was growing on the lower volume, I just took the volume down again. By the time I'm done with this tricep workout here, I'm only going to do 2 exercises for a total of about 6 sets. 3 exercises per muscle or per exercise for tricep. And keep in mind that I'm halfway through my blast here, so when I first start the blast, I'm only hitting 2 sets of 2 exercises. One of them being right here, the close grip push-up, or sometimes I alternate this exercise out for machine dips. I like the hammer machine for dips so that I can get a good squeeze on the triceps to kind of finish them off after doing the long head work. But even on this exercise here, I'm on my knees. I want to be able to get the reps. I'm fried at this point. My tris have been doing a lot of pressing through the chest and shoulder workouts. And my workout's coming up on probably an hour and 40 minutes at this point when you take into consideration all the warming up, all the top end sets and that sort of thing. In fact, you can even hear in the background the vacuum because it's getting late and the guy's running around vacuuming the floor, which seemed to be following me around. It was kind of getting irritating. I don't know. Maybe you can't hear it. Again, my primary focus for this exercise right here is just keeping my elbows tight as possible, and just getting a real good squeeze at the top. Trying to take a compound movement and isolate and squeeze my tris as much as possible.
Last one.
Last muscle group of the day is we're gonna get some calf work done here. Calves don't take much of a priority in my training these days. Been training for almost 27 years and I hammered the hell out of them for about the first 7, as I was born with chicken legs. I kind of laugh these days because I killed my calves, broke my ass to get them calves, and about 12 years ago, I would say probably the early to mid 90s, it quit mattering that it doesn't even matter that you have good calves anymore. Back in the 80s, you couldn't win a show if you didn't have good calves, and you were ripped apart for not having good calves. These days, there are good physiques all the time that win shows with terrible calves. Nonetheless, I'm still going to train them. I'm going to keep them up. I'm going to basically maintain them. It isn't going to do me any good to really break my ass and force them to grow at this point so that they grab more attention than my quads or hams. Pretty balanced right now. My focus as far as my lower body is more hamstring and more quad development. So I'm going to put them at the end of the workout. I'm going to hit a couple exercises for 3 to 4 working sets. Hit them hard, but again, not going to go over the top and just take it to the next level. I'm going to basically train them hard, maintain them, and be able to walk out of the gym knowing that I hit them good.
Bye.
Most people train their calves on leg day. I don't do that for a couple reasons. Number one, chest, shoulders, and tries. I open up the week on Monday with this workout because my chest and shoulders are primarily my weakest body part and have been for years. So it allows me to come off of my refeed, which is 99% of the time on Sundays, to come off my refeed on Monday, be carved up, have plenty of extra water weight, and come in and move a little bit more weight than I could otherwise if I train those muscle groups later in the week. I train legs on Wednesdays for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't need the leg progress like I need chest and shoulder progress, so it's a matter of priority as far as that goes. But at the same time, if I put legs later in the week, I can be dragging ass, especially when it comes to prepping. If I'm in a prep phase or I'm dieting for a show, by the time that last workout comes around later in the week, there isn't a whole lot left in the tank. So I'd rather get the legs done about halfway through the week. The reason I don't train calves with legs is a couple reasons. Number one, I've tried training them last after quads and hams, and they tend to cramp up quite a bit. There isn't a whole lot left in the tank once I'm done with quads and hams. I actually do abs after quads and hams, but that's only because that doesn't require a lot of intensity, doesn't require a lot of weight, that sort of thing. And I don't have to stabilize. You know, when you're trying to train calves after quads and hams, you're real shaky. It's hard to actually keep your lower body stabilized without being too shaky. I've also tried to train calves before quads and hams, and that doesn't work very well either, especially considering that I wrap my knees these days just because I'm old. My knees are beat up pretty good, so when it comes to quad training, I have to wrap them for the first compound movement on quads. And anybody knows that if you've got pumped calves and you're wrapping up your knees, it can get pretty painful. And it was actually distracting me during the set because the pain was so intense, it was so uncomfortable that I didn't want to keep up with the set. I wanted to get them damn wraps off. The other thing too is if you end up training calves first and you're hitting them too hard and you're hitting them too heavy and too intense, you're going to go into your quad training and potentially be shaky as well, whether you're squatting, leg pressing, that sort of thing. And obviously with my priority on quad and ham training, I don't want anything that's going to get in the way or potentially cut my sets short simply because I did some calf training prior to quad training that really wasn't a priority anyway. So the bottom line is it just works better for me to get that calf training done on a separate day, and I choose to get them out of the way early in the week after chest, shoulders, and triceps. So I'm going to finish up here. My last exercise is going to be seated calf raises. I only do seated calf raises when I'm not doing very much cardio. If I'm doing a lot of cardio or doing some cardio when I'm dieting, getting ready for a show, then I'm going to leave the seated calf raises out quite a bit. Maybe hit them once a month, that's going to be about it. For the most part, I'm only going to do direct gastroc work because when I do cardio, my soleus gets a lot of, it gets stimulated quite a bit from my cardio because I'm using an elliptical that I have here at home for 90% of my cardio anyway. So I'm going to hit a couple sets here. This is going to wrap up the chest, shoulder, tri, and calf workout. I hope you walked away with something here from the workout, picked up some information, maybe some tips, and were slightly entertained in the process.